It's about 9 o'clock.
And 8 o'clock here.
I mean, 8 o'clock. Sorry.
And 3 o'clock in Hawaii.
Where am I? And for our Hong Kong?
I don't.
No, she's on. It's
like if Pullman may jump on later because I know her pup is
like 8 in the morning.
Yeah, 9.
9 in the morning. So, shall we start?
Yeah, we can start.
Well, let me introduce you, Dr. Basko, for just a moment. So thank you everyone for being here for the Empower Hour, our weekly Empower Hour for members, and this time for the many people who've joined us who are not members of the Holistic Actions Academy, but have joined us for this wonderful talk we're going to have from Dr. Ihor Basko. I would spend the whole hour lauding Ihor Basko. He's a wonderful person and somebody that I think of particularly for serving not just his patients, but the whole family. And his commitment to animal health is amazing. He was participated in one of the first studies in acupuncture on pets in 1971. So he's been doing this for a long time with his heart and his soul. He helped found the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. He served with me on the Council of Elders, and he and his wife have spoken at one of our Council of Elders healing retreats. He's written written in many books, articles, magazines, and every time I go to Kauai, he has me be on his radio show. So finally, I've talked many times, you've heard me speak about his book, Fresh Food and Ancient Wisdom, and that is one of the books that everybody needs to have on their bookshelf. So rather than taking any time away from Dr. Basko, go for it.
Okay, just one sec. If everyone could please mute in the bottom left corner of your Zoom window, it says mute. That'd be great. Thanks. Except for you, Dr. Basko.
Okay. I'll get my slides on here somewhere.
Wait a minute. Mute?
I wouldn't do that. Why does he want you to do that? You won't be able to hear him.
No, that actually only mutes for speaking.
Okay.
Maybe he has to do it.
Mute everybody. Okay, so thank you for being there. Thank you for caring for your pets. And this broadcast is going to be kind of focused on geriatric animals because they really need the most help. And one of the things that led me to holistic medicine, or there wasn't any such thing back in the early 70s, was the poor care of our aging pets. And basically steroids and aspirin, and that's about it for an old dog. So we're going to talk about mushrooms, and we're going to particularly talk about 2 kinds of mushrooms, the Reishi and the Cordyceps, because they have the most application to aging pets. And pets that are on the verge of aging, which are those pets that are between 6 and 8 years old. This is kind of dedicated to my dog, Shiva, who is one of my longest living dogs. 23 years and 6 months, it's possible for a rescue dog. She did really well. And so she's my inspiration that, yes, dogs can live over 20 years old if you feed them right and you give them the right supplements as they're needed. So the Reishi and the Cordyceps are 2 very different mushrooms. One grows on wood, and the other one, dead wood for once, and the other one grows usually on some kind of insect, which is totally weird. So when you talk to people about mushrooms, especially if they're conventionally trained, like a veterinarian, they'll probably conjure up pictures of, magic mushrooms, poisonous mushrooms, slimy and creepy. And so many cultures don't have that feeling about mushrooms, but unfortunately our Anglo culture does have a mycophobia, fear of mushrooms. So it's kind of a hard sell in some circles to even talk about the medicinal properties of mushrooms. And so we'll go on here for a general idea of the benefits of mushrooms. So there's about 5 or 6 that I use, but I'm going to just talk about 2, but they all have these things. They activate your immune system, so they're great for preventing viruses and other things that can attack your animals. Great for cancer prevention and therapy. Geriatric medicine is probably the best utilization of these things, but I will give you other things to use it for. And then prevention of degenerative diseases, which is a common thing as you age. The oxidative stress in your body, which breaks down your tissues and your body organs, need to be, first, the waste products need to be removed, and second, the organs that help detox the body, like the kidneys and the liver, need to function better. So in veterinary uses, these are the ones that I use. In general, all mushrooms that are medicinal, but particularly reishi and cordyceps. So chronic renal failure. So what can you do for chronic renal failure? Well, there's a lot you can do besides the diet and a few other things that veterinarians normally tell you to do. You can suppress cancer. So if you already got or your animals have cancer, you can suppress it, slow it down, prevent it from spreading. You can actually prolong the life of your animal, even if it's a terminal form of cancer. Again, improve the immune system is one of the best ways to use mushrooms. And then, if you have resistant infections, so we have a lot of those so-called resistant strains of E. coli, salmonella, and other forms of bacteria that now have become impermeable to a lot of chemical drugs and antibiotics. So using, like for instance, reishi with an antibiotic will do many things. It'll make the antibiotic work better, it'll activate the immune system, and it'll quell the side effects of the antibiotic. Improve stamina and well-being. So that is really a good thing. So if many people go to the vet after their dog is already suffering from something, either dementia or their lack of energy. And of course, you want to get some blood tests just to see what is going on with the blood and the organs and the kidneys and the liver. But there's not much that conventional medicine can really help you with in this area, stamina and well-being. Hepatitis and liver disease, very common these days with so many people using pesticides, and so much of our environment is contaminated with herbicides, pesticides, and who knows what else is in the air. Lung problems, all those poor people in California inhaling all that bad air. Well, there is the immediate effects, and then there's going to be the long-term effects of inhaling toxic substances into your lungs. And then improve heart function and stamina, which is one of the things that they either die of kidneys problems or they die of heart failure. So those are the 2 main diseases outside of cancer. So cancer is your #1 killer of dogs. Over 50% of the dogs that are 10 years old or older die of cancer-related problems. 33% of the cats over 10 years old die of some cancer-related. Usually people can't afford to treat the cat, or they don't think chemo is good for their cat, so they end up putting their poor cat to sleep. So, but cancer can be prevented with proper diets, decreasing your chemical use on your animals, and using the proper supplements like mushrooms. So in Chinese medicine, we have these different ways of looking at things, gives you another perspective from conventional. What else does it do? So they have these weird connotations like increased chi, which is your vital energy. Improve digestive functions, which is really good with mushrooms. Improve your microbiome. Improve your adaptation to stress. And, you know, although your animals live in a nice house and things, you might be stressed, and that stress can be communicated in various ways to your pets, and they'll feel stressed. And then improve kidney and bladder function. So that's like the water element that we use in creating formulas for animals. There's a lot of research, unfortunately, and not a lot in this country. Maybe in the past, I would say 10 years, past 3 years primarily, some research in this country, but most of the research comes from places where they revere mushrooms, where they've used mushrooms for decades for food, for medicine. And so those places would be like Japan, Russia, Eastern Europe. USA is not high on the list, but India from ancient times. Israel is now doing lots of research on mushrooms. Iran and China. So that's where all the research comes from. And unfortunately, not all of this is in English. But you can find a lot of it on scholar.google.com. So if you're looking up something, want to find out about gannoderma, mushroom, and heart disease, most likely you'll find it there in English. And if it's not in English, you won't find it there. So yeah, improve the humoral and cellular immunity against diseases and against cancer. Research in hepatitis and liver diseases, which with a lot of people who drink lots of alcohol or exposed to toxic substances, that's getting common. Animals too. Adaptogens. So adaptogens are those types of herbs and things, a lot of plants too, that actually help you deal with your stress. They help you deal with your stress so it doesn't affect your heart and your brain and your attitude on life. Cancer, there's lots of research now in cancer, especially in this country. HIV and AIDS. When I was working in San Francisco, medicinal mushrooms plus some other Chinese herbs were used to mollify a lot of the side effects and prolong people's lives that have HIV, AIDS. And hyperlipidemia, which is like too much fat in your body and your cholesterol, things like that, works really well. Lots of research on that. So one of the ways, and this is Israel research, there's other research that shows cancer actually will kill the cancer cells, but this shows that definitely the immune system is activated in such a way that it attacks cancer cells and by the immune system. So activating the immune system to kill cancer cells or viral or bacterial pathogens in your body is how mushrooms work via the immune system. Now mushrooms, just to eat them, and a lot of these medicinal mushrooms also have nutritional benefits. So the thing that's really hard for conventional medicine to understand about plants that are medicinal or medicinal mushrooms is that they've been trained that a drug causes or creates or affects one thing. So you have one drug and it affects one thing. The problem with that theory is that you can't really apply it to these things that are created in nature because they have many compounds, hundreds of compounds. So they would do many things besides providing some kind of medical treatment or preventative treatment. They also provide nutritional benefits. So mushrooms are really high in various minerals that a lot of times we miss in our diets or in your diet, in your pets' diets too. Even though you're feeding a bag that was recommended by your veterinarian of dog or cat food, if you look at the minerals in there, they're mostly chemicals, if not all chemicals, and they're not really absorbed well. Most of your vitamins and minerals should come from your food. And the mushroom has got pretty much everything. It's got vitamins, your B complex, your provitamin D, essential amino acids like proteins, and different kinds of sugar. So sugar is not bad. It's just what form is this sugar in? Purified form, or are you getting it from a plant with high fiber? Which one of the good things about mushrooms, they are a high fiber food. There's lots of enzymes, especially proteolytic, which is one of the things we think about using when there is cancer or there's some inflammation in the body to break down the inflammatory compounds that are causing inflammation, discomfort, and pain. They also have various kinds of fats, good kinds of fats. So there's bad fats and good fats, and these are very good fats because somehow they decrease your bad fats in your body. Then the polysaccharides, which are different kinds of complex sugars that actually have most of the anti-cancer effects. There are many kinds, but these are the three that are the most common ones in the mushrooms that we're going to talk about, and essential oils. So some mushrooms have more than others, and by smelling the mushroom, a lot of times you can tell, if you're trained to smell, that you can tell a fresh mushroom from a not fresh mushroom, or a good brand from a maybe poorly processed brand by the smell. So could mushrooms provide enough nutrition to substitute for meat? Possibly. It depends on the breed of dog. So I would say that if you have like a wolf, close to the wolf breed, like a Alsatian, your German Shepherd, your large dogs, probably not. You'll probably need to supplement. But if you have a Chihuahua or a small dog, lap dog, many of these, if you look up where they originated and what the people ate in those times where the dog originated, you'll find that a lot of animals, our dogs live with people and they eat what the people eat. And so if you have an agricultural community based mostly on what they grow, they're not going to be eating lots of meat. So the dog will be hunting for lizards and various things to supplement their meat. But in general, mushrooms is a really good substitute for some meat. So you can cut down meat consumption if you know whether you raise your own or buy your own mushrooms. We'll talk about that later. It could. So look at all the things that are in here. So protein, so this is per 100 grams. So 100 grams, I don't know if you know how much 100 grams is, but it's a good amount. I would say about a cup. I would say about a cup of hard material would be, or food would be about 100 grams. Protein, different kinds of carbohydrates, sugars, fiber, beta-glucans, which are very important for your immune system and for your gut microbiome. So all these vitamins and minerals are found in most of the mushrooms that you'll eat. This is just a plain white button mushroom, and it has so much in it. But some of the other mushrooms for edible use, like the porcinis and the criminis, might even have more. The shiitake actually has the most nutrition of all the edibles, and also has other things that will help the immune system pretty much. So if you were to like cook mushrooms and add 1 egg and maybe some green vegetable, you would have a good meal. Like, I don't like to feed the same thing every day, but this could serve as 1 meal. So you could save on meat for 1 meal, or fish or whatever, but this can be fed to a small dog or any dog, but not constantly. So these are the mushrooms I found. And so these will grow in colder climates. These were found in Vermont on the way to a Animal or American Holistic Veterinary Association meeting where we had a while ago. I guess that was what, 97. And so I found these. And so there's different kinds of reishi mushrooms. So when you're buying reishi mushroom, it's good to know the company. And it's good to know what kind are they using. Are they growing it on hardwood chips, which is how they do it with commercially grown things, or are they growing it on straw, medium? So there's going to be a difference when a mushroom is grown on what it normally eats, which is hardwoods, versus something like straw or grains, which is easier to produce in a factory agricultural kind of system. You're going to have different properties. You're going to have less of the active ingredients than you would from a mushroom you would find growing in the woods by itself, wild crafted. So I'm not too keen on just going to the woods and cutting down all the mushrooms, but occasionally I will. I usually just take pictures of them. If there's not a lot of mushrooms, I'll just leave them alone and just buy it from a reputable organic mushroom dealer. So the mushrooms can be red, they could be brown. This is a different variety that grows here in Hawaii. So there'll be various kinds of gannoderma or reishi mushrooms. This is a common one that grows here, but also on the mainland where you guys live. And usually you're going to find them in the forest. You're not going to find them in the desert. You're not going to find them in even really wet weather climates, because they really need hardwoods, and a lot of hardwoods do not grow in tropical climates that are too wet. So traditional medicine considers the gannoderma reishi as a group. So if you taste this mushroom, and one way to know whether you have a good brand or not is they'll be very bitter. So I bought some in Canada that the highest grade for like $250 for a pound, where I normally spend $75 for a pound. And the mushroom was so bitter that when I mixed it with my normal liquids, they were too bitter for the cat, especially. Cats are real sensitive about bitter. So I had to go back to a milder version of the gannoderma, which worked fine for many years. So they're nourishing, so mention all those great properties. They tonify your heart. That's another word that's not really used in conventional medicine, but if you think about, yeah, that's what I want to do. As I age, I want to tonify. As my dog is sick, I want to tonify whatever organs are deficient, not functioning well. So that would be, the main ones are your heart, lungs, and kidneys for one group. And then astringents. So they're kind of like a mild diuretic. So if you have buildup of body fluids, joints are swollen, the weather is wet and very damp, and that affects your arthritis. So some animals get worse in damp weather. So what do? Well, you use herbs that help with a mild diuretic action to get rid of the dampness in your body. So this is what we call astringent properties or mild diuretic properties. Another simple word that is used in Chinese medicine, which is anti-tumor, but they'll call it disperses accumulation. So accumulations of like a lipoma, which is a fatty tumor, or accumulations of toxic substances that create a mast cell tumor. Going on to the next one, quells heat symptoms. So that means, like, one, you could have a fever and it'll calm down your fever. Not so much like aspirin, which works like within an hour or so, but eventually taking this, it will quell your fever over a few days. Or if you're suffering from like hot flashes. So one of the things that people don't understand, unless you're a woman, is hot flashes. And animals get that too. And hot flashes is the body's response to a deficiency inside one of the organs. So as you age, you basically dry up your body fluids. We call that yin. The yin of your body is represented by your body fluids. And one of the things that many of the Chinese medicinal plants and these mushrooms do is help restore your yin, so you don't get the body hot flashes, because you're restoring your body fluids and improving organ function. So in general, they tonify your qi, which is your stamina, your wei qi, which is your immune system, and your essence, which is like your genetic program. So we're all programmed, right? We're programmed for strength, and we're also programmed for various kinds of problems from our parents. So reishi, gannoderma, reishi is the Japanese name, gannoderma is the Latin name. Great for building blood. So one of the things you can do besides B12 or other kinds of vitamins and maybe some medicinal plants is use medicinal mushrooms to activate the bone marrow, because that's where your blood is produced, and also your white blood cells are produced in your bone marrow. And so when you're getting chemo or your pet is getting chemo, guess what gets wiped out? Your bone marrow. Why many people have to get bone marrow transplants, because they wiped out the bone marrow, and there's nothing that they know, the conventional veterinarians or doctors know how to restore the bone marrow transplant and a blood transfusion. So the other good things about reishi is regenerates lungs, and if you're living in a place that is harsh on the lungs, like either the desert or a dirty environment where there's smoke and various things in it, regenerate. So you can do things to block your toxic air, but you also need to do something to regenerate your lungs. Also protects against ionizing radiation from the sun and radiation from like Fukushima. Well, this is one of the things you can do is reishi mushroom, and I know a lot of Japanese friends who are taking mushrooms right now and other things. And then pain control. Nobody thinks about mushrooms and pain control, but it doesn't work like a drug specifically, but over time it will work like your ibuprofen without side effects. So that's that. And in human medicine, basically they've been doing geriatric degenerative conditions, nephritis, kidney problems, arthritis, and muscular atrophy. So when you start getting over 40, or your dogs start getting over 6 or 8, depending on the breed, they start losing muscle. You can feed them the proper proteins for building muscle and giving them exercise and things like that. But one of the good things you can do also is give them reishi mushroom to maintain muscle. Then cardiac disorders. So instead of reaching for the drug, I usually reach for the reishi mushroom and maybe some antioxidants to help the heart regenerate and also function better before we look at drugs, because drugs have side effects. They're not necessarily the best way to go. Hepatitis and mushroom poisoning. If you're hunting mushrooms and you don't know what you're doing, better drink a lot of gannoderma for a week before you go trying something that you probably don't have any business trying. Altitude sickness. I wish I knew this when I was up hiking some of the mountains in the Sierras, because that is a terrible way to be outdoors in nature with a headache and you feel like crap. Bronchitis and asthma. For some people on inhalers, dogs on steroids, this might be a better way to treat asthma. And you would include cordyceps, which is the next mushroom I'm talking about. So in general, here's all the medical uses on humans, but also this is a lot of what I use for pets. So it's sedative. So it's not like a drug, but it will help your animals sleep better after a while. So it's just like going to the gym, you can't just go one day and expect to have muscle and stamina and strength. It's going to take a while, maybe a couple weeks. But insomnia, nervousness, anxiety, adrenal weakness, because the animals are stressed, like some of these police dogs are stressed, or the ones that work at the airport, constantly stressed dogs, or the ones now searching for dead bodies in California. Analgesic and muscle relaxation is one of the things that it does gently. Ulcers, helps to treat ulcers in many ways. Too much fat in the body, high blood pressure. If your animals have lost their appetite for whatever reason, they're on chemo or they're not feeling good, they have kidney failure and they're have high ammonia levels. This can be something that helps restore the appetite. And then again, poisonous mushrooms. So another way of looking at it, so this kind of sticks in your brain. Reishi with heart stimulates the heart to function better, not artificially like drugs do, but more holistically in a way that doesn't cause the heart stress. Improves your immune system function, which is needed, like right now, flu season is around, or if your dogs are going to a boarding facility and you think your vaccination has prevented your dog from getting anything there, well, that works about maybe 30% of the time. So the immune system is really good to have boosted before you take your dog and expose it to diseases. Improves liver function, inhibits antihistamine release. So a lot of people with allergies, and asthma is a form of allergy condition, it will decrease the amount of histamine that is released from those cells that are trying to protect us, but they can still do their work protecting us, eating up the bad things in your body that shouldn't be there that are causing a reaction. And that reaction is due to the mast cells producing histamine. And so gannoderma actually causes that to be somewhat suppressed. Lowers your blood pressure and improves your endurance. So there's nothing really bad with this mushroom that I can say. I treat a lot of old dogs, and you know, when you see an old dog or an old cat, they don't have just one problem. It's usually a complex of problems. And so the nice thing about medicinal mushrooms is they can, like one mushroom, can do so many things. Help the heart disease, help arthritis, improve stamina, improve the animals wanting to exercise because the pain threshold is lower. And this dog also has skin problems, allergies. So there's a lot of these various compounds that in veterinary medicine, some people are really interested in knowing, well, exactly what is causing the effects against cancer. And some companies now, because they see the benefits, mostly in Japan, but it's starting here in the USA, but Japan's been #1 in like getting one substance like the polysaccharides and making it into an injection or making it into a pill. But the problem with that is, yeah, it might be effective just for cancer, but then you miss out on all the other benefits. So I like to use the whole mushroom in general because it has so many things. So these are the ways you can talk to your veterinarian. You know, you got the polysaccharides, and what do? They increase beta glucans and all these other things in the body that support the immune system to kill cancer. So this is one way, and sometimes it just goes over the top of most veterinarians, but anybody who's studied a little bit about medicinal mushrooms will appreciate knowing this. So the extracts that they've done, and this was done in the US Navy actually checked it out for knee pain. So a lot of people after they've retired or they're still in the US Navy have arthritis. So instead of taking a drug, they found that reishi works just as well as ibuprofen. And so that is a great thing to have as a adjunct to say you don't want ulcers in your stomach from taking all of the ibuprofen, and you don't want your immune system to be in your gut to be changed with the ibuprofen, which it will do. So again, geriatric, and this is what I use for old dogs, muscle atrophy. They come in with muscle atrophy, cardiac problems, and kidneys. One mushroom can do the whole thing. If you add cordyceps, which we'll be talking next about, you have the great way to prevent and maintain your animals, whether they have kidney problems or not. You can use it with chemo. I know a lot of oncologists will say, no, this is not good. We don't want you to use anything, but that's the wrong way to go about it, because in other countries like Japan and China and Europe, they will use medicinal mushrooms with chemo. Why? Because it blocks the radiation side effects and it generates more blood. Also, animals on cortisone. Some people have to keep their animals on cortisone or some of those other immunosuppressive drugs because they have a skin problem from hell. So they feel like, well, if we don't use cortisone or one of these drugs, then the animal doesn't do so well. So you can do this. You can do something to help with the side effects, which are damaging your adrenal gland in your animals and also the liver. Because that's what cortisone does. Damages the liver, weakens your heart muscle, stresses the adrenal glands, puts on more fat on your animal's body, changes protein into fat, and so that becomes a bad problem. Cushing disease, I mix other mushrooms for treating Cushing's disease, but I do not use drugs for treating Cushing's disease. And then, of course, if your animal is immunosuppressed, either by drugs or just has a weird or weak immune system, great for that. So a lot of dogs that come to me look like this. And so they have multiple problems, losing muscle, weakness, recovery from surgery, like this dog's recovering from surgery. So this is a perfect thing to give a dog recovering from surgery. Other ones have this heart disease where they can't sleep at night, so they constantly pace. Or the cats that will meow for no reason in the middle of the night because their heart is having palpitations. So how do you know your animal's having palpitations? You would have to listen to the heart with a stethoscope or feel the pulses in your cat or dog's rear legs. Then you can see, wow, this is not a steady pulse. It might go steady and then it goes fast and then it goes slow and then it goes back to normal and back and forth. And then they're restless at night. So weak puppies and kittens with parasites, how about that? A lot of these animals are really in bad situations. So yeah, you worm them, give them some vitamins, you put them on a good diet, and then you give them gannoderma because their immune system is crashed. They're more susceptible to getting parvo and other diseases. Viral upper respiratory tract infections in kittens, really common. What can you do? Well, you can prevent the problem if you're in an area where there's a lot of viruses or you have a lot of stray cats wandering through your yard and some of them are spraying on your door. That's not good. Well, what can you do besides get rid of those cats? Well, you can boost the immune system of your cat. Cardio support, like I said, general, that's one of the first things I do along with coenzyme Q10. Compromised immune system, so you have a cat with FIV, FIP, or FELV. Some veterinarians will tell you to just put your cat to sleep. Because really, why? Because they don't know what else to do. They'll think your cat is menace to society because if your cat bites another cat, potentially that other cat can get the disease, which is possibly true. But the treatment basically is nothing, maybe antibiotics from your vet, but this is another thing you can do. Senility, which we mentioned, the animal is a little out of it, doesn't recognize you sometimes and is staring at the walls or is uncomfortable at night and is pacing. This is a great thing for that. And poisoning. So poisoning, gannoderma along with milk thistle, those two together work really good for regenerating the liver and also improving getting your body to get rid of the toxins that are inside your animal's body. And so this is one of the cats. We have so many stray cats here that we've used various things. And I guess the good thing is for a veterinarian is try something to save the cat. And what haven't we tried yet to save these cats with these serious viruses that are basically born with them, passed on through their mother, is to try using medicinal mushrooms, maybe with some other things. So again, the polysaccharides have the anti-tumor effect, immunostimulating properties by increasing these macrophages that attack cancer cells and T cell activity, which a lot of the T cells are created in the spleen. And as you know, if you've had dogs with splenic cancer or splenic irregularities, sometimes it's not cancer. The body is trying to produce some of these T cells, and some of these T cells are actually trapping cancer cells and storing them in the spleen. And it's a strong antiviral. So the good thing for veterinarians who love to use drugs and antibiotics, reishi is not going to make anything worse. It's going to make it better. So a good way to maybe even recommend to your veterinarian that this is what I'm going to do. I'll follow your directions, but I'm also going to use reishi because it makes your antibiotics work better. And there's lots of research on that too. Right, terpenes is what makes the mushroom have a smell if you're sensitive. Ling Qi is the Chinese name for this, and the triterpenes are that part. Like I said, the hard thing for many people trained in conventional medicine is to understand that one herb or one mushroom can do so many things because there's so many different compounds in that mushroom or plant. Okay, so we're going to kind of switch gears now, and so we have about 20 minutes. The caterpillar mushroom, which is the weirdest mushroom in the world. So if you buy it in Tibet, wild, it'll cost you $150,000 per pound. Yeah, $150,000 per pound. Why? Well, one, because it's rare, it's being over-farmed. Because there's such a high demand for it in China, because it gives people the idea, and it does, some of this is true, it'll make you live longer, you'll have better sex, you'll have the ability to produce children as you age into your 70s and 80s. I don't know why anybody would want that, but anyhow, those are some of the characteristics and why it's so expensive. Most of the mushrooms are grown in a factory, an agricultural factory. And so there's two kinds of cordyceps. There's the expensive kind, and then there's the one that's actually manufactured in a farm. So the one that's manufactured in the farm looks like the one on your left-hand screen in a jar. It's grown in a jar in a medium. While the other one on the right-hand side grows on, I mentioned insects, but also certain mushrooms like puffballs. So it's a parasite. It's one of the weird things in nature is that some of the parasitic plants that we use for medicine feed off the tree or the plant, and from that suck up all the nutrients and create all these amazing compounds just from what they eat. So you become what you eat. So food is your medicine, and it's no different for the mushroom. So the better the substrate, the better the medicine. So you can't basically afford these $150,000 ones, but the ones that you can afford basically run about $85 per pound in general for an organic brand. So in Chinese medicine, we have these things where we talk about nourishing lung yin, nourishing the fluids of the lungs. So if you're living in the desert, or LA, or someplace where the air is not bad, your body constantly has these fluids that are protecting your lungs. But after a while, especially after you age, you run out of fluids. So one thing you can do is add something that helps nourish those fluids, your cellular protection, your cellular nourishment, by giving the cordyceps and reishi together, and benefits kidneys. So I use primarily cordyceps for many kidney problems in cats, primarily because it has a very bland taste and the cats don't mind it. Occasionally I will add reishi, which is a little bitter, takes a little more to mix and get the flavor right. Like for instance, butter. So if you get salted butter and you mix your bitter reishi mushroom with some melted butter and mix it around so it mixes really well, the mushroom with the butter, and then add it to food, the cats will accept it better than just throwing the powder in there. So what are the uses? Okay, chronic liver disorders. So a lot of times you'll get something from the veterinarian that it's just not working. Maybe the problem's not getting worse, but it's not getting better. So this is a great one for chronic liver disorders. High cholesterol, a lot of animals have that. You can tell with if your animal's got lipomas or your triglycerides. A lot of cats have fatty liver disease. Triglycerides are really high. The liver values, the enzymes are high. Lung cancer. So there's not a lot of good treatments for lung cancer in animals, but this is one of the things that I use for treating lung cancer. Slow it down, keep it from spreading to other organs, and give the animal a better quality of life. That's the basic thing, better quality of life. You know, asthma comes up again, so both mushrooms, good for asthma and the lungs. Chronic kidney failure. So if you're up for it, I would use both reishi mushroom and cordyceps for chronic kidney failure. Can't go wrong, and you might want to try it yourself, which I recommend. So if you're going to buy some mushrooms, organic mushrooms for your dog or cat, you might as well try it yourself. Cardiac arrhythmias, so another mushroom that's good for your heart and keep the heart beating at a regular rate without using a drug. Why would this work? Well, partly for some of the minerals in both mushrooms, like magnesium for one, will help regulate heart, but also by strengthening the heart muscle itself. So the geriatric disorders that we kind of categorize, why do we categorize them this way? Well, kidney yin and kidney yang deficiencies. So kidney yin, dog's drinking lots of water, has low back problems, is going maybe cataracts, forming cataracts. That is kind of a sign of kidney yin. Kidney yang deficiency is like the cat or dog just cannot hold the urine. It just comes out no matter where it is. So it's really a more serious condition. And then lung yin deficiency, which is like people with asthma and lung conditions. Impotence is why that one mushroom, when it's harvested wild in Tibet, costs so much, because I don't know, I guess there's a lot of people, it's in demand. They want to cure their impotence, which is possible. I haven't used it for that, but I believe it is possible. So again, veterinary applications, just to review here. Generalized weakness in young and old deficient animals. So combining the two mushrooms, and I'll tell you a little bit how I use them when we finish this group here. But, you know, yeah, B complex vitamins and good maybe raw meat if you're into raw meat. But generally, there's not one herb that can do so much, whereas if you combine these two mushrooms, you can do so much, strengthen. I mean, I've been using it on myself, and I notice a difference going to the gym, that I have more energy and more strength going to the gym if I drank a couple cups of this prior to going. It definitely works. So you got to try it yourself. Anemia, restore blood. So besides, sometimes you do have to do a transfusion, but very expensive. You can use vitamins and other things, but a medicinal mushroom would be very recommended for anemia. Both cordyceps and reishi stimulate the bone marrow to produce more blood. Kidney failure, most common reason I use cordyceps. And again, we mentioned the geriatric deficiencies, which, you know, if your dog doesn't have, or your cat doesn't have cancer, it's going to have a kidney problem or a heart problem in general. That's the three things that animals end up dying of: cancer, heart disease, or kidney failure. So again, bone marrow stimulation. If you're going to do chemo, you might as well start your animals on this prior to the chemo and along with the chemo, and then for maybe a few months after. Lung cancer, and asthma. So those are the things. So a lot of things that can be done with just 2 or just 1. If you want to try just 1, very beneficial. So here's kind of an example of, okay, we have a cat with kidney failure. This cat is like 21 years old. And of course, you're going to have kidney problems. So besides hydrating this cat, it's hydrating itself because it's drinking a lot of water. Sometimes they do need to have fluids under the skin. So you have to learn how to do fluids under the skin, or have lots of money to send your cat to the vet to have that done. But of course, every time you send your cat to the vet, they get stressed. And that's not really good. So if you can do some of this injecting fluids under the skin at home, then you're better off. Antioxidants, the ones I use are your taurine, which is an amino acid. It also helps the heart. Coenzyme Q10 and chlorella to help detoxify the animal. Of course, you're going to put on these phosphate. So if you have a lot of phosphorus in the blood, it depends on how high. Sometimes I do not worry about that. But if it's like 12 or higher in values, then yeah, you need some kind of, not for the rest of the animal's life, but off and on to see how that works. And does it make a difference? Sometimes because your cat is urinating or your dog is urinating so much that it's losing all these minerals, you don't have to really mineral supplement your animal, because if you're using mushrooms, the minerals you need are in that medicinal mushroom, whether it's reishi or cordyceps. And I like to use acupuncture, probiotics. So probiotics, what do? Well, for a cat and kidney failure, they will decrease ammonia levels, which will decrease the ammonia levels in the blood, which will make your cat more comfortable. Because if you have high ammonia levels in your blood, which is a toxin, it makes the cat feel nauseous and also gives many animals a headache. So they're not going to be wanting to move around much with a headache. So using cordyceps in combination with reishi is probably your best treatment at home, along with these other things I have put down here. So here's a sample meal for a kidney problem. So chicken liver. So in general, I like high biologic protein foods. So what's a high biologic protein food? That is a protein that when it's broken down, it's utilized, and there's not a lot of ammonia floating around, or it doesn't damage the kidneys. So if you look up high biologic proteins, see that chicken liver is one of them. So I use some lettuce, something green, sweet potato. For a dog, they do need some fiber. They do need a little bit of energy. Red bell pepper has a lot of vitamin A. Vitamin A is great for healing various parts of your body, especially your kidneys. And then cordyceps, I make like cook cordyceps in chicken broth and then add the chicken broth to that meal, so you're not always using powders. Powders are easy, but it's much better to like make a broth and mix your powdered mushroom with the broth and then add that to your food. So the chemistry might be interesting for some. So it has all these things. If you ever want to show your veterinarian this kind of stuff, it might impress them, but if they don't know a lot of biochemistry, it might not impress them at all. So one of the things that us herbalists have to study is the biochemistry of plants and what exactly do all these things do. So yeah, amino acids do these things, like glutamic acid. For glutamic acid is one of the things that helps treat ulcers and decreases the amount of acid in your stomach. Somehow it converts the acid in your stomach to a base, so it's not so irritating. Increases platelet. Platelets are those things that keep your blood from bleeding out. So it basically keeps the clotting factors healthy, prevents liver and spleen, so improves liver and spleen function. Definitely works on the thymus, which is another big lymph node in the animal's body. So it actually activates the thymus, so it functions healthfully. And it has these other antibacterial properties, just like reishi, antifungal, antibacterial. So a lot of times I will just use these two mushrooms to see if we can quell an infection that in an animal that's had antibiotics, but it's not working very well. In Chinese medicine will say, well, this mushroom is sweet and neutral, so it basically doesn't have that irritating bitterness as the reishi does, and then it has all these benefits to the lung and kidneys, nourishes the kidneys, helps them regenerate, reinforces energy and stimulates blood. So it's a simple way of talking about what a mushroom does, or any plant does, was we put it into Chinese, classical Chinese medicine actions. So I've treated many cats with mushrooms, and if you mix it properly in the food prior, then you're not going to have a problem with most of these mushrooms because they're basically neutral in flavor. So this is the key here, is how to administer them. Well, if you can figure out the dosage per animal, and then you can make a soup to mix with your mushroom. So you figure like, okay, how much would you give a cat? So if you buy the powder, and I recommend buying the powders, you buy the powder from the sources that I've listed because I've used them and I trust them. There are other sources. I went to a mushroom festival in Oregon a couple of weeks ago, and there's other good sources, but these are the sources I've used. You take your powder, it's been water extracted. So you don't really have to do anything to it except make your animal eat it. So one way to do that is to mix it with a soup. So you get some hot soup. How do you make hot soup? Well, get some bones and boil the bones. There you got hot soup, really simple. And you can store that in the refrigerator or in your ice cube trays and freeze them. So you heat up the soup, add the powder, and mix it with the food. So say a small dog the size of a cat, or a cat, might need totally a half to 1 teaspoon of mushroom for the whole day. So if you mix reishi and cordyceps half and half, so say a half a teaspoon of one and a half a teaspoon of another, that makes 1 teaspoon. How much liquid do I need to make that 1 teaspoon of powder into something I can mix into the food? Usually 1 or 2 tablespoons of the soup. So the soup, while it's still hot, you mix it, and when it cools down to room temperature, then you can put it in the food twice a day. And it doesn't matter, like some drugs, you shouldn't take food. I think that since, if you look at history and how people used it traditionally, like in China, they would basically take your reishi mushroom and cordyceps and cook it with your chicken. And so you're drinking the soup and you're eating the chicken, and that's how it's made. So I think some herbs you have to do it in between meals. This is one of the herbs, the medicinal mushrooms, that you do not need to mix between meals or give. Then there's these freeze-dried capsules and powders. So those are kind of convenient. You can just pop them down your dog or cat, if you, probably not your cat, right? But it's costing you more money to put it in a capsule or powder that's been freeze-dried. So really, just buying the powder is the best way to do it. There's tinctures, so they soak the mushroom in alcohol. Well, that's okay for people, but it doesn't work. Well, it definitely doesn't work on a cat. You have capsules, but you have pills, hard pills, which sometimes are very convenient. But like again, I said, you're wasting your money if you're just doing that. So other products have combinations of mushrooms and supplements like antioxidants, like this Cas Options. There's some other brands, but Cas Options is the one I use mostly. And so here are your resources to start with. So Mushroom Harvest for powders, all these Fungi Perfecti for capsules, and Namix.com for your top of the line mushrooms from Canada. And then on the right-hand side, all the different brands that are made into chewables, like Cat's Options is a chewable for dogs and cats. Then I use human brands. One is called Power Mushrooms. They're a different blend of your Reishi. Enhance is another form of mushroom that's made for people to enhance immunity. And then Cordyceps 9 is another brand made in pills that I use for dogs with asthma. So you should have those in your notes. And you know, really quality is where you want to do it. You don't want to just buy something that's on sale or something that you don't know where it came from. It came from China, could have heavy metals, pesticides, and who knows what else. So I only buy from Canada, Oregon, or Washington State. In your notes, you have a way to make a soup. You want to, okay, I don't want to do powders or mechanical.
Dr. Ihor, I just want to take a moment to let everybody know that it is 9 o'clock. So we've done an hour, but for everyone who can stay, we're going to be able to continue the recording. And you will, if you can't stay, you will be getting the recording afterwards. So therefore you'll have all the information, but, and people have been posting questions, and when Dr. Ihor's finished, we'll go ahead and ask those questions as well. So keep going, Dr. Ihor, that's fine.
Yeah, so I gave you a recipe here for how to make a soup that you could store, you can freeze, you can do it whatever way you want to. You might notice there's some maybe weird things in here, like kombu. What's kombu? Well, it's a type of seaweed that has many benefits. One of the benefits is anti-cancer. It's one of the seaweeds that's anti-cancer. Then on the right-hand side, you'll notice, well, add these things in the summer. Okay, so this lecture was given in Japan, so they have these kind of things. So these are root vegetables that cool your body temperature down. So if you have a hot summer, you don't want to take ginger, you don't want to do garlic, which warms up your body temperature. You want to take herbs that cool down your body temperature. So just to add, and to make it more complex, is to add some kind of, whether it's a root or a different plant to cool down the body temperature, that might be a good idea. Like your kale, for instance, you can put more kale in the summer. And then wintertime, you want something energizing. Garlic is not like bad. I mean, most veterinarians are afraid of garlic. They're not afraid of those pesticides they sell you over the counter, which they should. But a little bit of garlic in this much of water is not going to do you any, it's not going to harm your animal. What it's going to do is actually improve the flavor, improve the anti-cancer and antiviral effects, and it has a warming effect. It stimulates energy in the body to make your body warm, just like ginger does. So that's why I put all those things in there. And then if you're going to make mushrooms for yourself, you know, it's really beneficial to eat it. One of the best reasons to eat mushrooms, instead of taking those pills for lowering your cholesterol, is to make mushrooms. So your best 2 mushrooms, okay, so this is for people. If you want to eat mushrooms that lower your cholesterol, your oyster mushroom and your shiitake. Shiitake and your oyster mushrooms are the 2 ones that will lower your cholesterol quicker than anything else outside of a drug. Have no side effects. That's a good thing. If you're into mushrooms, it would be good to study it well and go mushroom picking with someone who knows what they're doing. Because a liver transplant, if you pick the wrong white mushroom, is hard to find to get a liver transplant, and it's really not a good way to die, is to damage your liver. So when in doubt, stay out and don't pick that mushroom. This is your best bet for looking up all the medicinal properties. My dad was a mushroom hunter, so it wasn't weird for me to hunt mushrooms with my dad. What I didn't know was that they were medicinal. It was a book by Solzhenitsyn. He was a guy who spent a lot of time in a Siberian labor camp after World War II, and he after 20 years, came out of there with cancer, but he didn't have any money to treat cancer. And he noticed that the people in the village that lived nearby were old, happy, strong, and nobody had cancer. And they told him about shaga, one of the other mushrooms that is in this book, actually. And that led me to Christopher Hobbs, who's like my mentor in medicinal mushrooms. And this book is a really good starter for all of you because it includes all the other mushrooms you might want to eat. And so mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms by Christopher Hobbs is something, if you're really interested, you want to learn more, is the where to go. So that's it, folks. So we'll take your questions now. Yeah, so what questions do we have?
Okay, so I think this you answered on the one slide. Terry was saying something about, she wondered if you still thought the company's CAS options was okay.
Yes, I know where the mushrooms come from, and yes, they are still okay. They've been, the problem with some of these companies is that a bigger company buys them, and then another bigger company buys them, and then one of the things I do is I consult companies and make sure that what ingredients they use are coming from a good place and have been tested for heavy metals and pesticides, which CAS Options is one of those companies or one of those products now called by Vet Classics that they do. And I've seen the certificate of analysis is what you want to ask for. Certificate of analysis shows exactly how many metals, what kind of metals, and are they in high amounts, pesticides, and that kind of thing. You need to have companies do, and some companies do, and most companies do not.
So it sounds like, Dr. Ihor, that certificate of analysis is more important than an organic certification in terms of mushrooms.
Yeah, ideally, you would want both, but true, organic mushrooms from China without a certificate of analysis, enter at your own risk. You're not sure what you're going to get from China, really. So I stay away from China. I stay away from companies that don't, well, that's not available. So the companies that, like Namix for one, they do have mushrooms from China, but they also have the certificate of analysis. And some are organic and some are not. But that's true, Christina, that better to have a certificate of analysis, number one, and then number two, that they are organic.
Now, in terms of, you talked about dosage for a small dog or a cat of being 1/2 to 1 teaspoon. What if you were feeding mushrooms? Julie's husband actually is a mushroom forager. So they have lots of mushrooms around of many, many varieties. So when you're feeding it as part of the meal, you don't have to worry about overdosing with mushrooms at all, correct?
Not necessarily. The problem with feeding fresh mushrooms, okay,
or cooked. Sorry.
Yeah, they'll be cooked. But if you don't dry them out, if you don't dry them in the sun for at least a few hours. So when you dry herbs, you're processing them to concentrate all their active compounds. So when you just cook fresh mushrooms, you're getting more of the nutritional benefits, but you may not be getting all of the beneficial medical effects. And
so
then
if you're
go ahead.
working with a healthy dog, though, and you're just doing preventative, would you still dry them for a few hours before making the meal?
Depends on how much time you have, because that does take time. I'm drying herbs now, some in the sun and some in a dehydrator, and it takes more time, more work, more effort. So it depends on your time. If you can find fresh mushrooms out in the wild, and there's plenty of them, and you don't have time to dry them and do that whole process, then it's probably fine.
And then in terms of powdered mushrooms that you purchase, is there a concern about about overdosing with the mushroom powder?
Now, like I said, okay, these are the general rules of thumb. I should have put them down on a slide. So 1/2 to 1 teaspoon as a total dose for the day for a cat or a small dog, like a Chihuahua, up to 2 tablespoons for like a German Shepherd with cancer. So that 2 tablespoons would be a tablespoon of reishi and a tablespoon of cordyceps. How much fluid do you need for that? Well, you would need a lot more liquid and soup, and that's why I think when you're giving like tablespoon, a dog needs 1 tablespoon in the morning and 1 at night. That's a lot of mushroom to be mixing in meat and stuff. Some dogs will do it, but if you mix it with a little bit of liquid, hot soup, I say, then you let it sit for a while, and that absorbs all the flavors of the meat and the fat in the soup. So fat is good with the mushrooms. In fact, when you cook mushrooms, you're always using some kind of fat, either olive oil or butter or something else. And that helps also extract more of the benefits, the triterpenes and some of the other chemical compounds in mushroom by adding hot bone broth or soup you made to that mushroom and then mixing it with food. That really is a better way. So anywheres, and really I wouldn't worry about overdosing. You know, I've never had that problem. So the maximum would be like 2 tablespoons for a German Shepherd. And the minimum will be 1/2 teaspoon for maybe a small cat or a Maltese for the whole day as a preventative. But if you have cancer, then that's a whole different thing. So you want to double those doses, possibly. It'd be really good if you had a veterinarian holistically inclined to help you guide you, you know.
Okay, I think.
Yeah, a couple of email questions, including mushrooms for blood sugar maintenance or elevation. Are they contraindicated, for example, in diabetes?
No, they're not contraindicated. In fact, they'll help regulate blood sugar naturally. I'm not into insulin. I'm into diets. You can definitely regulate an animal's diet and regulate sugar if you go to someone who knows what they're doing. Like for cats, you put them on a raw food diet, basically. Some fiber, high fiber vegetables that help feed your microbiome. I mean, cats are carnivores, but they need fiber. If they don't have fiber, their microbiome doesn't work. And so if you have cats roaming around the neighborhood, they're going to eat, they're going to eat mice and rats and birds and things, but they're also going to eat grass and various other plants to get their fiber because they need the fiber to feed their microbiome, and they'll crave it. So diabetes and mushrooms, not a problem. Actually, shiitake mushroom is one of your better ones to use with diabetes. So if it's a diabetic cat, we'll put them on a raw food diet with shiitake mushrooms in a powder form.
And Julie asked about her kitty with anemia and was wondering about mushrooms for the kitty with anemia, especially reishi.
Yeah, so a kitty with anemia, so you would put it on maybe liver would be one of the meats it gets a little bit every day. And if your veterinarian could give your cat, I like to do vitamin B12 with folic acid as an injection once a week. And some clients will want to do that at home. So I'll give them some syringes to do that at home. So the diet, some injections, a B complex syrup. So what I do is I'll buy a B complex syrup like from RX Vitamins, for instance. RX Vitamins makes amino B-plex. So I'll take the mushroom powder and mix it with like reishi and cordyceps together. And I'll mix it with, instead of a hot soup or something, I'll mix it with a palatable liver vitamin B complex like that one. Amino B-plex by RX Vitamins. And so then you have the mushrooms in there and you have your B complex on a daily basis, twice a day. And so that's another way to do it. So alone, yeah, it would take some time just to do reishi or just to do cordyceps. Use both together with a B complex syrup like RX vitamins, amino B-plex, and then you're doing a lot at home. And then hopefully your veterinarian is knowledgeable enough in vitamins to give your cat a vitamin injection once a week, or you can.
Any other questions, Dr. Jeff?
Nothing that we can't handle on the forums. So,
and I believe, Dr. Ihor, that you will do telephone consulting with people. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you go to my website, Dr. Basko, DRBASKO, drbasco.com, you can look up that information. I do phone consults. I try to hook up people with a veterinarian that's holistically inclined in their area, but it's surprising how many people can't find one in the USA.
And also, there are a number of holistic veterinarians who may specialize in one area or another, and a lot of them actually have very little knowledge of mushrooms.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though they're great holistic veterinarians in many other ways.
Yeah, you know, it takes so much time to learn like acupuncture, and it takes more time to learn Chinese medicine. And it takes a lot of time to learn homeopathy. And so you want to get better and better and better if you're a veterinarian in those realms. And like I started with homeopathy, and then there are things like, oh, better focus on the diet, you know, because you got to do more than homeopathy. You got to do diet. And then, okay, then we have these other problems that I couldn't get homeopathy to work for me. So then I look at Chinese medicine and herbs and things like that. So yeah, it's like if you're a doctor, you should be studying all your life because you'll never know enough. And I study what is interesting and what can help my clients.
And that's exactly why we're here every week doing webinars like this to
Right. Thank you, guys.
Convey that info. No, thank you. I mean, the thanks are manifold. And yeah, if you can't find a holistic vet and you just want general guidance, you can certainly, join us or check the resources or call Dr. Christina or Dr. Basko for further insights.
Well, I guess that wraps it up for this time. We want to thank you so much, Dr. Ihor. Mahalo, mahalo.
You're welcome. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, and you'll all be receiving the recordings in a little while.
In the chat. So, all right.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.